relates to mortar bombing a flock of sheep. The target description, in this case, was moving white rocks in the open.
In this video, I talk with Corporal Nolan, a former mortar commander, about engaging a flock of sheep with mortars and other stories from his service time. Do you have some interesting experiences that you want to share?
Well, I have two. So the first one relates to quick actions, and it's kind of a funny story. So as I mentioned earlier, in Ireland, we don't spend a lot on the military, so a lot of our equipment weapons are obviously military grade, but then vehicles frequently will be civilian vehicles painted green with minor modifications. So for example, we use, as I mentioned, Nissan Patrols and Mitsubishi Pajeros in my day, and some Isuzu Troopers which were still hanging around. I don't know how they were, but they were. And normally these vehicles would be, again, literally you would go to the Mitsubishi dealer, just buy whatever number of vehicles you need and then modify them. So they might have IR driving lights, or some of them would be what we call FFRs, which are fitted for radio. So they might have the antenna and the adapter in the back to take a singer. But by and large, they were essentially just suburban cruisers. So it's like what your mom would take the kids to soccer. So they came with things like child locks and radios, which was actually great, because if you went in a truck like a MAN diesel or a DAF, you had no radio. So you're driving for 4 hours, you're bored off your head and nothing to listen to. Whereas if you were in a Pajero or if you were in a Nissan, you could whack on the radio and actually listen to some music and actually have some fun, right? So there's some nice things like that. But like, you have stupid shit like child locks. So you know what a child lock is. It's the little switch on the door that prevents the kids from opening the car, right? And so when the Swiss mortar came into service I'm going to say it was 2008, I can't remember the exact year, there was a load of things that they had to do to certify the weapon, okay? And we got lucky in that we got to be part of two things. One was the first to transport or to drive the weapon with ammunition on board. So unlike the 105 and unlike the previous mortar, the Swiss mortar actually had a rack that you could have ready rounds on, essentially. So when you got into position, you already had ammunition. You didn't have to wait for the limber. You didn't have to wait for the truck. You had ammunition with you, which was great. And it also meant you had space in the car, because in the past, when you had no room on the mortar for the weapon or for the ammunition, you would keep some ammunition in the vehicle, which meant less room in the vehicle, right? So we got to trial that, and that was pretty interesting because it kind of screwed the weight dynamics of the towing and also made getting in and out of action a little bit more difficult. But the other thing we got to do was quick action. So we had to certify that the mortar could be used for quick actions. And again, it was probably just the case that we were due to do our annual camp and we were due to fire them that week. And the School of Artillery decided, okay, you guys will practice the quick action drill and we'll get it certified. So for the first time in service, we were going to take this, drive down a road, and without going into a surveyed field or going into a pre-positioned or pre-planned position, we were going to fire essentially on the move. Obviously, it's a mortar, you have to stop, but you know what I mean. So come the day, I realized, okay, I want to be the first gun in action, because, as I was saying earlier, ammunition in Ireland is scarce. So like we would do a shoot and a battery might only get 36 or 48 rounds for like 6 or 8 guns. That's not a lot. Right, so they're super competitive to get the rounds, and on a quick action, the drill is whoever's first in action gets the rounds. It's not like a planned shoot, whereas if you go to the field, they might decide, okay, number 4 mortar will get the rounds because they're the closest to the center of the battery, and we'll use them to adjust. In a quick action, it's whoever's ready to go gets going. So I'm like, I want to win this. I'm like, how can I cheat? And we had an officer. We used to call him Smallin, great guy. I have a lot of time for him. And he said to me when I was a young gunner, he was like, Gunner Nolan, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. And I was like, what's that, sir? He's like, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. Which I thought didn't make sense, but I took it to heart. So a couple of years later, I'm a detachment commander. We're about to test Ireland's first 120 mortar shoot quick action. And I'm like, how do I win this? And then I remember the child locks. So I go to my guys and I'm like, right, lads, gather in. We're going to do a quick action. We're going to go down this road. You're going to get the warning. It's going to be 3 beeps of the horn. Action, I think it was action left. I can't remember, whatever direction. What I want you guys to do now is go and wish your mates and the other teams luck. And as you're doing it, just casually engage the child lock on all their cars. So my lads went off and they're like putting on the child locks. Nobody notices because it's a little switch. It's hidden out of the way, right? It's most it's in the side of the door where you can't actually get it as the door has to be open. So they would open the door, say hello, click the child lock, go back to the car. So we all mount up, we head out, we're driving along, we're baiting along, it's like beep, 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 action left, action left, action left. So we drive into the nearest field, we peel out of the car, we're getting the mortar off, we look around, there's guys pulling doors and pushing and climbing out windows because they can't get out of the car, because the child locks are locked. So they're all fighting with their car, and we're like getting onto the bearing, we're all side zeroed, we're ready to go. So we call it in, CPO's over with his prismatic compass, and he's like, range, whatever it was, or bearing, elevation, blah, 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 fire. So we start firing. It's like, number 2 mortar, send 3 rounds to number 1 mortar. So the other guys are giving us their ammunition because we're already shooting and they're still only getting out of the cars. And like, we finish, we fire, I think we fired 8 or 9 rounds in one go, which again, when you've got 36 rounds for the battery, like 9 rounds in one go, it's quite a lot. But like, we're talking to the guys later, I was like, yeah, it's like, who put on the child lock? And we're like, what are you talking about? Who do that? It's like, we obviously did it because we wanted to fire the most rounds. We're like, you fucking prick. It's like, yeah, like, what are you going to do? Like, you want to win, right? And so, like, the future's bright, the future's child locks. But yeah, it was pretty funny. And again, it's something that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen if we had proper military vehicles. Like if you had long wheelbase Land Rovers or Hummers, or I think you guys use pin scours for towing mortars, right? Like if you had something like that.
Probably. I don't know exactly what. I've never seen a mortar, I think, in the Austrian army. I know we have them. And the funny thing is we call them, like the Wehrmacht called them, grenade launchers. We call them Granatwerfer, or grenade thrower, actually.
Yeah, I was talking
because the Germans now call them Mörser, but we still call them.
Yeah, I was talking to our mutual friend about his battalion were firing 120s. And he was like, oh, yeah, we're going to throw grenades next week. And I was like, cool. Actually, speaking of grenade, the hand grenade was the biggest anticlimax of my life. I'm going to throw that in there. But he was like, yeah, we're going to go shoot grenades. And I was like, cool. How many are you getting? He's like, 900. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense because I'm thinking hand grenades. And it's like, you know, it's a battalion or whatever. Yeah, he's in charge of a battalion. So it's like a handful of hand grenades per person. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot, but it makes sense. And then I realized he's talking about mortars. And I'm like, hey, when you said grenades, are you going to shoot mortars? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you're getting 400 or 900 rounds of 120. And he's like, yeah. I was like, jealous. So that's how to do neutrality properly. None of this 36 round shit. Like the thing is, to be fair, when we would do courses, we'd get more ammunition. But when we fired as a regiment, it was pittance. You're like, this makes no sense. But throwing grenades, throwing mortars, it's the same to us. But my other story relates to mortar bombing a flock of sheep. So basically what happened here is, I've mentioned to you earlier on the Glen of Amal, and you could go onto Google Maps and you can see this area is small. And I think I gave you a map of the Glen of Amal once it's actually, if you have a look. Yeah, in the pile of books I gave you, there's a map of the Glen of Amal. You can actually look at it. It's a public map. It's a civilian map that I laminated for doing my homework. Might even have the trig points on the back of it if I remember correctly. But the Glen of Amal is really small, okay? And so generally, in several of the firing positions, you can actually see the entire range. You can see the impact area. You can see the mountains that border. It's like a bowl. And it's pretty cool. But one of the problems with the Glen of Amal is because it's small and it's surrounded by farmland, sometimes sheep get onto the range. Now, near the Glen of Amal, there's what's called the Army Range School, or the Army Warden School, if I remember correctly. It's actually just an office in an old school building where the Army Range Warden Service maintains an information office. So basically, they will tell you when firing is on, what time. They won't tell you who's shooting or what they're shooting. It'll just be, don't go under ranges on these days because firing practice. And the reason they exist, as I understand it, was that back in the olden days, and this could be the 80s and the 70s, the 60s, I'm not entirely sure when they came into being, but before my time, there was always apparently very common for sheep to go out onto the ranges and get killed. And then farmers would sue the army and get compensation. And then apparently an army vet realized that the army was killing a lot of sheep. So they were like, what's going on here? Why are there so many sheep on the range? And he got the idea to start testing the carcasses for, I don't know, TB or foot and mouth, or I don't know, it wouldn't be foot and mouth because when we got foot and mouth in 2001, the whole country came to a standstill. It was like COVID, but funny. So he realized that farmers were putting sick sheep onto the ranges to get compensated for sheep that they couldn't sell, right? So that's the story. That's how it's conveyed to me. If it's true or not, I don't know, but it makes sense. So the Army Range Warden came into existence, and their job is to make sure that people don't go on the ranges, don't go into the impact area, and to make sure that when units go out that they signpost. So one of the things you do before you do an artillery shoot or a cavalry shoot or whatever in the Glen of Amal is you go around the perimeter and you put out lights and you put out flags to warn people. And they also make sure that the farmers don't put sheep onto the range. So in 2002, my second camp, if I remember, we went to do our annual range practice. So we rolled down to the Glen of Amal. We were doing our camp, we're doing all our dry shoots. And then on the day of the shoot, we go to our firing position and we're in, if I remember it, was Stranahili, which is like a forest, but we're on the edge of a forest. So we can actually see into the impact area. And we're like, there's something wrong. And our detachment commander said, yep, there's sheep on the range. And he's like, great. And I was like, so what's going to happen? He's like, yeah, we're probably just not going to fire. So we set up our mortars. So we go onto our little metal flag, as I was telling you about earlier on, because we're in a prepared position. We set up, we get our sight zeroed, we get onto center fire, we get surveyed out. We do everything we're supposed to do, and then we wait. And we wait. And we wait. And every now and again, we look over at the CP, and it's a flurry of activity. Guys are coming, guys are going. The sheep are still on the range. And we're like, what's going to happen here? Like, we're not going to shoot. We're not going to let us kill the sheep. It's not going to happen. A couple of hours pass, and we get a command. We get what we assume the next command we're going to get is empty guns, prepare to move, which means we dry fire, pack up and fuck off. Or, sorry, dry fire, pack up and leave. No, we get fire mission battery. So everybody, like headless chicken, run to their mortars to get into their positions. And a fire order comes down, and it's, I'm going to say, I can't remember exactly which gun was or which mortar was designated. It was number 1 mortar, 1 round, adjusting bearing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the bearing it was given was to the right hand side of the impact area, and the remaining 5 mortars were given a fire for effect on the left hand side of the area, and they were giving it to under control of the CPO. So we get an order. We're all ready to go. So number 1 gets the order to fire by the CPO. He fires his round. It takes 45 seconds. Hits the ground. Sheep start running. We're given an order to fire. 5 rounds go to the other side of the area. So what's happening? 1 round's gone off on the right hand side of the range. Sheep all start running to the left. What's going to the left hand side of the range? 5 mortar bombs. And the surreal thing is, we're all looking at this going, is this happening? Are we really doing this? And then you just start seeing thump, thump, bump, bump, and you can see little white things spinning up in the air. You can see, and we're like, is this really happening? And we're like, this is surreal. And we lambasted a flock of sheep. Now, I don't know the number, but the rumor was it was like 100, but like it was definitely multiples of 10, and it was surreal. Now, the thing is, they were maybe 4 kilometers away from us, 3.5, 4 kilometers, so you could see them, the little specks just running across the hill, and we're like, they're not going to do this, we're not going to do this, and we did it. It was just like, whew. But the funniest thing was, when we give a fire order, as I mentioned earlier, you get the fuse type, the ammunition type, the charge, the bearing, the elevation, and you get the target description. So I can't remember the mortar bomb from 2002, but the target description, which is normally troops digging in, enemy forming up, armor column on the move, whatever, in this case was moving white rocks in the open. And we were like, what? Moving white rocks in the open. Because we can't say blast the sheep, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, so the guys were like, move target description, moving white rocks in the open. And we're like, no, this is happening. We're like, yeah, best day of our lives. And I can't remember if we fired 8 or 10 rounds, but we absolutely melly-fonted them out of it. It was pretty funny. And for me, talking to guys afterwards, the weirdest thing is, as I was saying, you can see in the Glen of Amal from some of the firing points, you can see into the impact area pretty clearly, is that when you're looking at this thing that's far away, so it's a little white speck on a hill, you know what's happening. We were all visualizing it at the same time. It was like, I can see the sheep being blown up, but obviously I can't see him in detail because he's like 3.5 kilometers away. But at the same time, I'm imagining what that looks like. And I was like, guys, does anybody else have this? They're like, yeah. So it's insane. It's like, what the fuck? Like, it's super surreal. But it was pretty funny, and I think it's the funniest fire order I'd ever heard, moving white rocks in the open.
And was this a major scandal or something? Was it
No.
in the news?
Well, no, because why would it? Why would it? Like, the sheep shouldn't have been there. Like, as I was saying earlier, there's literally one place you can fire.
But I mean, since a lot of people can see it, or nobody made a story out of it, even that it was an accident or something, so it was kind of covered up, or nobody cared.
No, like, I don't think people care. That's the thing. Like it's sheep. Like, a farmer might complain about it, but what can he say? His sheep are in the impact area on a range where.
And they basically, you assume, none survived, that they were.
Oh, I have no idea, but I definitely some were killed outright, and definitely I would imagine some died slowly. But I don't know. The thing is, we wouldn't go out onto the range to find out. Like, the only thing.
So yeah, that's too dangerous, I guess.
Yeah, but the thing is, in theory, when we had, the blind is, right? When you fire around and impacts, it doesn't go off.
Yeah,
it's called a blind.
So a dart.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but
you say a blind. That's interesting, because I know dart, and in German we say Blindgänger, which is blind goer, basically directly translated. Yeah, so you use blind as well.
We use blind for a round that doesn't explode. Or for
is this Irish or is this generally English?
I would imagine it's British, because most, like, you have to think about it, like,
and
the artillery.
What's the difference between a dart and a blind?
It's the same thing, I guess. But I think blind may be an OP term, because obviously the OP have to record rounds when they impact. So normally, when they're fired, observation post or forward observer.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So they normally, when they call in a fire mission, they should, in theory, count the amount of rounds. Now, if they're calling for like a 30-round sheaf, they're not going to count 30 explosions. But when you're calling 4 or 5, you should be able to count 4 or 5. Yeah. So if a round doesn't go off, we in theory are supposed to go looking for it. So we will go into the impact area, see it, mark it, and then the ATOs or the EOD guys will come out and take care of it. But in my time, I don't think we ever had a blind. So I had something that went wrong, but I don't know what. And I'll explain this to you, right? So we were firing, as I was saying, when we got the Swiss mortar, one of the innovations, one of the interesting features is that we got mortars that had variable time fuse, proximity fuse, and they had a radar. And one of the things that we didn't know about, because we didn't have this before, is that when you fire for effects, when you start putting rounds converging on a target, if you've got rounds with radar and they get very close to each other, what do?
They interfere with each other.
They read each other and they explode.
They consider themselves. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so instead of getting the
radar,
getting the radar reflection off the ground, or getting it from other rounds. So we weren't allowed to fire for effect under proximity. So we'd always fire HA, or we would disperse the rounds so that they wouldn't converge. But I once fired around on proximity. Fired it, couldn't see where, because we were firing behind trees. So fired over the trees, it went off, did its thing. I heard nothing. A few minutes later, the battery sergeant comes to my gun position. He's like, Corporal Nolan, attachment rear. So I follow the guys in. We stand at the back of the gun. He takes my notepad off me. Doesn't tell me what he's doing. Takes my notepad. Reads my last fired gun data. Reads the sight. Then he checks my bubbles. That's also something you never see in the film, bubbles. I hate bubbles, because you got to make sure the gun is leveled and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never see it. I hate bubbles. He checks my fuse caps. So every time you fire a round, you have a fuse cap, unless you've done something wrong and you fired the round with the fuse cap on, which happens. I never did it. So he checks my fuse caps, and then he checks my incremental charges. So he knows I've been firing charge 2, I guess. So 6 rounds of charge 2. That means I have, on a mortar, we had 7 charges that could, what an incremental charge is. It's the extra gun pass.
Yeah, they would put up to increase the range, or basically the
we used to call them pineapple slices, because they look like a pineapple slice. So at charge 7, you'd have all 7 on. At charge 6, you'd have 6 on, and so forth. So he would know that I've been firing charge 2, that I should have X number of these left, right? So he goes and he counts them all. So all my incremental charges that are left over add up, all my fuse caps add up, all of my safety pins add up, my gun data adds up, my bubbles are level, my notepad's correct. And I'm like, is everything okay, Battery Sergeant? And he's like, yeah, it's grand. He just walks off. And I'm panicking. So I'm like, he's done that because something's gone wrong. Now, I know I'm okay because he'd gone away and he hasn't pulled me off the gun or, taken me out and given me a bollocking or anything. So I'm okay. But in my head, I'm like, I've done something wrong. What's happened? What's happened? So I go to him later on, I'm like, yes, what's that about? He's like, oh, nothing, it's grand. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? What's happening? So it doesn't tell me. It goes off. We go back, continue shooting. And later in the day, and kind of an interesting thing, the last guy to fire an artillery round from a Dublin-based artillery regiment was a guy on my gun, or my mortar, who came down from the OP. So on the same day that we were shooting, our annual camp. We were also supporting a forward observers course. So our guys went out and did forward observing in the morning. And then the guys who were doing the course went out in the evening. And the guys from the course came down, and I was like, here, lads, any idea why the battery sergeant was checking all my stuff earlier? I was like, oh, yeah, your bomb went missing. And I was like, what? Like, oh, yeah. We didn't see it land. We heard it explode, didn't see it land. And we're like, what happened? We don't know what happened. The bomb went up, didn't come down. But because my gun data was correct, my charges were correct, because I had all the things I had to have, we were certain that from a firing position perspective, everything was fine. And the theory, and I don't know who came up with this, is that maybe we hit a flock of birds. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah, it was my thought that it was a bird or something.
Yeah, but I was just like, you can imagine, like, the battery sergeant comes down, starts just checking your shit, not giving you any answers, and then goes away, and you're like, what's just happening? And just so happens that your mate who's been the forward observer for the day comes down after the shoot, and he's got nothing to do, so I bring him onto my gun. I'm like, here, what happened? He's like, oh yeah, your round went missing. I'm like, what do you mean it went missing? He's like, well, we heard you fire it, we heard it explode, we didn't see where it exploded, so we think you hit birds. I was like, what? That's a thing? It's like, so yeah, but again, I don't know if that's the case. I just know I fired around, it didn't impact. But if it had impacted the ground and not exploded, the Foo guys would have recorded that in their book, and in theory, we would have gone out and marked it on the ground, and it would have been destroyed in place by EOD guys.
So you mentioned before the round flies about 45 seconds, more or less?
Yeah, it's something like that.
Depending on the range, so.
Depending on the range and the elevation.
So what is, like, at max range, more or less? What is the time of flight?
Honestly, I don't know, because we never fired at max range. Because again, the Glen of Mall is quite small. So, but you could be flying 45 seconds. But it is quite long. It's not like in the movies where you fire and there's a bang straight away. You got to wait. And the Foo guys had a drill that they knew that you would fire at X time. They would wait and they would count. So they know the time of flight from the gun position to the target is 35 seconds, whatever, 45 seconds. They know at 30 seconds, they're going to lift up their binos and start watching, because if they're watching from the time you fire to impact, they're going to be tired and their eyes are going to hurt. So they're like, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, blind.
So I assume that the proximity round basically activates after like 20 or could you set the time after or what time the radar activates?
No, and the way it works, right? So if you see the fuse, on top of the fuse there's an opening, and in the opening there's a fan or a turbine blade, and then there's two little slits on the side of the fuse. So basically air comes in, hits the turbine blade and spins out the side. So the turbine blade spins up, and it's called, just by air pressure being pushed through it around as the top to the sky, it powers a small generator, and that powers the radar. So the round has to be traveling quickly to enable the fuse.
The energy, the fuse, yeah.
Now, on the French mortar, I remember this from my time as a recruit, the fuse itself wouldn't arm until it rotated a certain number of times. And if I remember correctly, there was 2 ball bearings, and the round had to spin several times to unseat the ball bearings, and once they unseated, the plunger could plunge. But that was, I can't remember the time, again, it's 20 years ago, but that was purely mechanical. That wasn't electric. That was literally gravity is going to pull on these little balls. They're going to come out of their positions, and once they come out of their positions, the plunger can plunge, and it opens the firing way so that the fuse can do its job.
So a flock of birds was likely that you hit that one, yeah. But wouldn't you?
I don't know. Is my honest answer. I don't
Wouldn't
know.
you see a lot of feathers if you hit a? I mean, if you hit
Well, the
one
thing is,
bird, I think.
I think if you hit one bird, you wouldn't. I don't know this because I don't know the power of the radar, but it had a range of like 3 meters. At 3 meters, it would detect the ground and it would
Yeah.
detonate. I
3
don't
meters
know.
is a lot. If I mean, did you see like there was one photo I think of an American airplane in Vietnam that was hit by artillery, by its own artillery, and you can see it like breaking up or something. I think, and I mean, this is like a direct hit basically, and 3 meters for a bird. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, but the thing is,
fast.
I'm not entirely sure if you would get enough of a radar return from a bird. That's my thing. That's why I don't necessarily buy it.
Thank you very much, Dermot.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.